Good morning, everyone, to our third episode of the Eureka Conservative Daily. A few minutes late, not too late. Actually, it's 9:01. I'm 1 minute late. I've done better than what I thought I would. There's my co-star in the background, JJ, as he always does, jumps on the couch as soon as I start talking. It's been, a week where all the politics has gone to the dogs, but my boy's fine. So I don't need to tell him to sit down. He's just figured it all out for himself. So Barnaby, come to me for a few tips on how to get your dog to sit and not get in the way. Having said that, he does like to poke his nose in just to say g'day, don't you, mate? It's been a bizarre week in politics. It's Australian politics, well, politics probably everywhere, but Australian politics, it has literally gone to the dogs. It's insane. But having said that, let's get on with the show. First thing first, we'll give you a look at that Melbourne weather of ours. It's a bit more gloomy than yesterday. So that's the bay. Still pretty still. Breeze is getting up. We're told it's going to basically pea down with rain sometime today, but it doesn't seem a lot. If it does, it usually comes across the bay. There's not a lot of cloud there, but it can come in very, very quickly. So who knows? We've been spoiled a bit with our wintry sunny days in Melbourne the last probably 3-4 weeks. So it's been good. So I'll keep talking as I put together all my stuff on my laptop. The production budget of nothing in this podcast. So if you're looking for all the bells and whistles here, you're not going to get it. So we just talk, we share, and we stand up for Aussie values, traditional Aussie values, not the rubbish that Albanese is talking about with the modern Australia, which partly we'll get to, because it looks like he's coming for our flag now, that thing over there. So that was, we had the main podcast last night where we had Ben, a regular now from Australian Talk, gets on, and I've got no doubt at the next election, Albo will come for the flag, and he will also come for the constitutional monarchy. He wants us to be a republic. And I've made the argument for some time now that the conservative side of politics in this country should beat him to it. Actually, there is a lot of sense in the argument for an Australian republic led by the conservative side of politics. If we don't do it, we will get one led by the left side of politics, and that will be a disaster. So beat them to the punch. I've got no attachment to the monarchy. Have you? And if you do, you've got a king who now is a multi-faith servant to multi-faith, not just the Anglican Church, and he seems to spend an awful lot of time either visiting mosque or welcoming a bunch of Islamic clerics and leaders and all that into Buckingham Palace. So I'd rather cut the ties now, but that seems to be just me. But I'm going to keep pushing that argument. There's a lot more to it. As we discussed, if you want to have a look at it, look at our podcast last night with me and Ben. We chatted about that at length, and we went through the reasons, or I went through the reasons as to why we should look at becoming a republic in Australia and cutting the ties with the monarchy and with UK. I mean, there's the old arguments about time we stood up on our own 2 feet and we have an Australian head of state and all that. They're valid arguments. I can understand that. But while Queen Elizabeth was alive, I felt there was value in being attached to the monarchy. Now that she's gone and King Charles has got it, and he's obviously indoctrinating his kids into the same thing. If you don't believe that, look at Sir David Attenborough, indoctrinating him into the climate change cult as they were growing up. Nice people, but there's a lot of nice people out there. I don't see why we should be kowtowing to people who aren't in our country. How often do we have the royals in Australia? So how much do they know about Australia? Don't know. Anyway, getting off track a little bit, as I can do. As always, time for our little Bible read. So hope you stick with us, whether you're a Christian or a non-Christian. We are up to the 22nd. These are always, I think, a bit of good fun. Or at least I try and put it in an element of fun where I can. But they're also, I found them always not to let me down in being appropriate into what we may be talking about. So it's interesting to hear whether you're a Christian or a non-Christian. So today, July 22nd, we've got Matthew 9:18-26. Jesus helps two people. Here are two miracles intertwined into one story. The two people approached Jesus quite differently, but both in faith. While Jesus was saying this, a Jewish official came to him, knelt down before him, and said, "My daughter has just died, but come and place your hands on her, and she will live." So Jesus got up and followed him, and his disciples went along with him. A woman who had suffered from severe bleeding for 12 years came up behind Jesus and touched the edge of his cloak. She said to herself, if I only touch his cloak, I will get well. Jesus turned around and saw her and said, "Courage, my daughter, your faith has made you well." And at that very moment, the woman became well. Then Jesus went into the official's house. When he saw the musicians for the funeral and the people all stirred up, he said, "Get out, everybody. The little girl is not dead. She's only sleeping." Then they all laughed at him. But as soon as the people had been put out, Jesus went into the girl's room and took hold of her hand, and she got up. The news about this spread all over that part of the country. Interesting. People will degrade that. They'll put it down, all that sort of thing. This is what they talk about, the fairies and pixels and all this sort of stupid nonsense, while actually ignoring all the other stuff in the Bible that is very, very relevant to how we live today. Is that relevant? I think you need to read the whole Bible to put a lot of that in their context. As a Christian, do I believe that happened? Yes, I do, because I believe that Jesus is the Son of God, so that God is capable of anything if he wanted to. So, but I believe in the Bible, and I believe in the Christian message because I've read the whole New Testament. My goal is before I die to read the entire Old Testament, but I pretty much know most of that. Not most, I shouldn't say most, a lot of that. For me, when I was choosing about whether I wanted to be Christian, I wanted to read the New Testament to read what Jesus taught about how we should live our lives and how it's relevant to today. So, and just on reading that clinched me. And it wasn't the miracles; it was the promise of better things in the next life and actual justice in the next life. And how many times in this life do we see people get away with things that you just think is not fair? There's no justice in that. The message of resurrection, the message of being with your loved ones again, there's a whole bunch of reasons why, and you need to go there and do what I did, explore it, read it. I read a passage each day. If you're not sure, read the Bible, go talk to family, friends, a local priest, a nun, whatever, and talk to them about your faith as well. I just needed to read the Bible, go back to church. That was enough for me. I was fortunate. I was raised by parents who felt giving me the knowledge I needed to search my faith when I needed to, which was about 27. I was very lucky I had those parents. Not everyone has those parents, especially these days. There's a lot of parents that don't embrace the Christian faith and they raise their kids without it, which is a shame. There is still a lot of obviously very good parents that do it. And I'm not saying if you're an atheist, you're a bad parent. But it would be nice to give your kids the knowledge to be able to make their own decision. All right. So I think that is very important. Everyone needs to make their own, and everyone will anyway. I mean, I think if you try and deny your child to become a Christian, that will naturally lead to some curiosity for later on for them to research it anyway. So they may come to Christ and Christianity later in life. You may as well try and have those conversations. And me and my brothers and sisters had amazing conversations with our mother about the Christian faith as we're growing up. We'd spend hours because, we didn't have phones or anything like that, arguing back and forth. And Mum always used to win with the old chicken and egg argument every single time, drove us nuts. So anyway, research it, investigate it. We'll be reading a passage here to start the show each day. And politically, I want to read that passage because we're having pushed upon us that Christianity isn't as acceptable, for example, as Islam. We're having a whole bunch of things pushed upon us with this Islamophobia recommendations being forced through and hate speech laws. If you want to protect the history and heritage of that flag in this country, Christianity played an enormous part in the establishment of this country. So It's just something we should be looking at and going forward. Anyway, that's just an opinion. You don't have to agree with it. You don't have to watch the podcast. Sorry, my big cup of coffee, my T-Rex. Talking of the dogs, I was made aware by Ben last night. I didn't know this, and I'd love for someone to confirm it with me, that apparently Albo raises his dog or keeps his dog as a vegetarian. So I was wondering why the news, and we're going to get to the news in a minute, how manipulative they are. I was wondering why they news show a clip of Albo. So we had a charity cricket match at Kirribilli House in Sydney, and he invited all these stars and celebrities and all that along. And good on him, they raised 10 grand for a charity. But at one stage, he got on the microphone and lectured them all. I thought it was a joke. It apparently turns out to be serious. So I'd love to get it confirmed. But he was lecturing everyone about giving his dog Toto. Is it Toto? Whatever the dog's name, poor dog. It looks that dog is used, no doubt, to carry political favour, to get certain people to think, oh, look at Albo, he's a nice guy. I've never seen a more uncomfortable relationship between a pet and its owner as I see between Albo and his dog. But he lectured everyone about giving it a sausage. Obviously, they had a barbecue or something going. So apparently someone's fed it a bit of sausage. Well, you can't do that. The dog's a vegetarian. How the hell do we know whether the dog's a vegetarian? Like, dogs don't get a choice in it. They can't make the decision. The owners make that choice for them. It's in their DNA for them not to be a vegetarian. If they were led to their own devices and had the scope for themselves, they're not going to be eating carrots. You know, they would be chasing down, especially his Toto dog. It wouldn't survive in a real world without humans to look after it. But it would become a meal. But, you know, the food chain, it would eat things like, you know, a rat or anything, a smaller animal, and would have no trouble because in its DNA, it's got to survive. So no dog can be a vegetarian. It's enforced upon them by their owners. So anyway, he was lecturing him and going on, yet everyone's cracking it about Barnaby telling his dog to sit down in a forceful manner. I would be shocked if most dog owners don't do that, or most even pet owners, and sometimes crack it with their pets. I'm the first to admit I do it with mine from time to time, very rarely. He's the most spoiled dog on the planet. But he can get on my nerves, and he can get one thing he does when I'm at work downstairs. He will get this spot around my legs and sit down. He'll sit down there for 30 seconds. Then he'll do a circle. I think he likes to sit under the desk. But then he'll do a circle on my chair and legs and do it again and do it again and do it again. But the problem is there's not that much space. So to get under, I've always got to move my chair. So I'm trying to get some work done. And you can imagine after an hour of it, you get a bit sick of it. And I'll say exactly what Barnaby, just sit down, just stay. And he eventually does, but it can be very annoying. But right now, he's just sitting down on the floor behind me. So he knows when I'm talking like this, just there he goes. He's about to get up on his couch. He's a good boy. Now we go to sleep. He goes, what the hell are you talking about now, Dad? So, but have I yelled at my dog before? Yes, I have. I think every dog owner, if they're being honest, especially if we got a big one like this. And there's no doubt that Barnaby being on a farm and having a farm background and a country background, he's probably got a Kelpie or something like that, a Blue Heel, and they're just energetic dogs. And while that's great, that can also be very annoying. They are demanding of your attention nonstop. And he was doing an interview on ABC, and some are saying he was faking that there wasn't a dog there, and he just saying that to deflect from Ferguson. Well, good on him if he did. He certainly caught the attention. But I mean, what's been bizarre is not that Barnaby yelled at his dog and to get him to sit down. What's been bizarre is the woke response to it from the left. Trying to paint him as some sort of evil man, or he's unbalanced or unhinged, simply because he yelled at his dog to sit down. It just sort of reflects who they are. I mean, I'd rather Barnaby yells at his dog to sit down than Albo, who won't let his poor dog eat meat. or a bit of sausage, and he feels he has to lecture everyone about not giving his dog sausage. I mean, that's bizarre. Isn't that weird? I mean, that's just weird. I mean, even if you did raise your dog as a vegetarian, what's the odd bit of sausage going to do that you need to lecture all your guests? If you're going to be like that, then don't have your dog there. Put him in a safe, secure spot where he'll be happy and comfortable. Little Toto's not going to care if he's on the end of a bed, but and he obviously survives without elbow, for example, when he's in Parliament in question time. So it's all a show. I would argue his marriage is a show, and I think a lot of people put that out there, whether that's a legitimate marriage or whether that's something to put the perception across. Hey, Elbo's just a normal bloke. Look at him. He's married. He's got a nice-looking younger wife. He's got the dog, all this sort of thing. But when you watch them at an airport, they don't look like a married couple. Elbo is always leading, and he's got, what's her name, Jodie, about 3 meters behind her. So it's all very weird and very strange. And Elbo's allowed to be weird and strange. I think he is weird. For a person who's been to, 37 Mardi Gras in a row, gay Mardi Gras in a row, you'd have to say there's a tendency for him to be gay. I mean, there you go. He may not be, but naturally people would have their suspicions that he could be leaning that way, if not all that way. He wouldn't be the first gay man that's been involved in a fake marriage, put it that way. And Jodie, she's got a good life out of it. She's got a high profile. And even if they do split up after Elbo is eventually out of office, whatever the arrangement is, she's going to have a bit of a celebrity status. The former wife of an Australian Prime Minister. She'll be able to write books, go on all the shows. She's set for life, whether she stays with Elbo or whether she moves on. My betting is I reckon she'll move on. We'll see whether I'm right or wrong. But I could well be wrong. It's just an observation. Anyway, let's get into news of the day. And there's a little bit around. So I've got to log myself onto X. And one of the things I'm going to show you is about our magnificent media. Our magnificently corrupt media, that is. And credit to Ben again from Australian Talk. Yesterday he sent me a whole bunch of stuff to maybe consider putting on the program, which is fine. I'll consider anything from everybody. So if you do want to send stuff through, send it through. I'm not really going to go down the conspiracy trails, but news of the day or news that I think is relevant to our lives, I will put on this program. So if you've got anything you would like for me to consider putting on, by all means, do what Ben did and send it through. Now, I'm going to be reading you out an email soon that Channel 7's, a staffer from Channel 7's Spotlight show sent, because One Nation apparently published this, that sent to One Nation, because one of the things that's been in the news since Sunday night was this Pauline Hanson tour of the UK and an interview with Tommy Robinson. And 7 put across, and this is where it's all information and it's tricky and I say it's corrupt, you're putting across information that is just basically misleading. Katie's always good. The Australian manufacturer. Here's something that we'll be talking about. The Australian Manufacturer Workers Union. So I'll put this into my Eureka Conservative bookmark. I do like the bookmarks, though I don't manage them as well as I should. Speaking of which, we got to go into the bookmarks. Oh, no, we don't. We got to go into, take that back. Going to go into chat. So we'll get this up. I'll give you a look at my, what are we looking at? There we go. So there's a little bit of news around, interesting, which is one of the things we want to do. Monday morning, just get up. You're not looking at a produced show. You're not looking at talking points. You're just looking at a conservative boomer. We'll come into that too. He was giving a few opinions on the politics of the day, the politics of the week, just personalised opinions, and we'll see if we can have a bit of fun with it. I've got to show you that from last night, but where is it? Come on. Here we go. Media. Have a look at this. So, breaking, Labor government quietly paying journalists wages at 184 newsrooms. Anika Wells' 67.6 million journalism assistance fund is part paying the wages of more than 2,000 journalists, and more than half that money went to just 4 ownership groups. So we'll get the full thing up here. Come on. It's a morning, so it's decided to go slow on me. Naturally enough, it always will. Come on, hurry up. Sorry, got to put up with this internet that I've got, like you would probably have. Make sure I've got that sharing. Yep. Just trying to get into the post to get the full post up. Oh my God, it's taken forever. Sorry, guys. Sometimes the old broadband can be okay. I don't know what it's like in your area. I think you obviously would have to spend it, but look at this, how slow it's going. That's insane. Anyway, sorry, you probably don't see this at your end, but it'll come up in a minute. I'm just trying to get that page up, and it's taking forever. Let's go. I'll share the tab instead. And as you can see, all I've got is a blank page. That's the internet going. I've got the old blue circle. So anyway, Anika Wells is paying these part wages for to help fund journalists' spots. The government should have nothing to do with that. The whole point about the media is for it to be transparent, and it also to be reporting of the news in the day in a way that can be critical of all politics and show stories without favour. Now, when you're paying someone like this, here we go. We've got it up, have we? God, that took forever. So 9 took 16.1 million from the government. 7 side of the New Southern Cross Group took 11.3 million. Crikey, The Conversation, the Saturday Paper, and Mamma Mia are all there. News Corp, Sky News, and The Guardian were barred from even applying. So there you go. You've got a bias there against certain media. Opinion writing doesn't count as news under the government's own rules. And no funded newsroom ever has to tell its readers. The fund ran dry in 28 days. So 67 million gone in 28 days. One recipient was 2 days old, another collapsed 5 weeks later. We've published a full table of all 184 recipients, every company, every owner, every dollar, and their share of the fund. So there's a link to there on that. So listen, I'll put that on my feed, and I'll just put on here. So, and that is out. So if you want to go to that link, you can go to my feed, see it, it'll be on there, and you can have a look at the link and go through it. But how absurd is that? Why is government going into the media in that way? And then when you consider, well, let's hope I've got this up. Like I said, I got up a bit late this morning. Normally I'd have these all up, so it wouldn't be a big deal. Got a few. Where is it? I'll work backwards on this. This is it. Bear with me as I go through this. Hanson turns on Channel 7 and leaks email about what really motivated her to travel to the UK after being stitched up by the network. During 7 News' Spotlight hour-long special on Sunday night, the party leader, Pauline Hanson, was film recording a podcast with far-right UK figure Tommy Robinson. So, that was out well before they aired that Spotlight episode. Anyway, the broadcast, and what we didn't know was the following. The broadcast special claimed Hanson travelled to the UK on a fact-finding mission with Channel 7 cameras because she had invited us along. But Hanson's Chief of Staff, James Ashby, rejected that version of events, describing the program as a stitch-up and insisting the trip was originally conceived and pitched by the 7 News network themselves. Now, that's quite damning. especially when you look at the episode they aired. He claimed the network organised her meeting with Robinson and said it was not part of the original plan, but was scheduled after talks with the Reform UK leader Nigel Farage fell through. On Monday, Hanson's office published an email from Spotlight senior producer Luke Mortimer on social media. The message outlined plans for a 1-hour investigation into immigration and detailed a proposal to take the Senate to Britain, along with veteran reporter Liam Bartlett. This whole trip was organised by Channel 7. And look at what they said the program was going to be about. We want to do a full-hour show on Australia's recent years of record-breaking net migration. Already in the 9 months to September 30th, it's 415,760 according to the IPA, the Institute of Public Affairs. There's no way we can maintain that, but they're going to be pushing it, the email said. So that's an email from Channel 7 who's acknowledging the mass migration that we can't handle. I don't think we need to read the tea leaves too closely to see uncontrolled migration is shaping up as next year's defining issue, just as net zero has been this year's. I don't think net zero has been talked about that much, and will also be for the next year or two. Ms. Hanson, yourself and the rest of One Nation are out in front of this issue, putting uncontrolled immigration front and centre this year. So you can see they're kissing her ass to make her consider doing this show. The show ideally will further enlighten our viewers to the scale of the issue we are facing and what we might face if we don't take back control of who comes to our country. Now, that's fertile ground for One Nation. You can see why they were attracted to this. I would argue they should have been very wary of it, but anyway. Mortimer then said the UK Labor government's hand had been forced by anti-immigration party Reform UK to address high figures. True. The correspondence then appeared to contradict claims made during Sunday's Spotlight broadcast that Hanson initiated the trip and had invited us along. Instead, it showed Seven pitching the immigration-focused investigation involving travel to Britain with the One Nation leader. For the beginning of our story, we want Nigel Farage to invite Mrs. Hanson to Britain and to show her where he believes Australia is headed if we continue down our path of uncontrolled immigration, he said. We can discuss travel arrangements for you and Pauline to the UK. The email also detailed several locations Seven hoped to visit, including Birmingham and the southern coastal town of Bournemouth. Voters in Britain are seeing pictures of boatloads of migrants, often young men, from the Middle East and Africa, crossing the English Channel, and they're seeing the seaside towns turned into camps for people who claim refugee status, Mortimer said. So this producer at Channel 7 recognises the problem. They understand the issue of mass migration and the impacts, negative impacts it is having in that country. And they pitch this to Hanson and One Nation. He also repeatedly referred to uncontrolled migration and suggested the program would examine the consequences of migration policy through the eyes of Hanson and One Nation. Did it do that? The figures over decades in the last few years substantiate a strong case for uncontrolled immigration. This is the backbone of our story based in fact. I have more thoughts on how we can illustrate the strain uncontrolled migration is placing on our infrastructure, which we can discuss. And that would have been a great conversation. We didn't get that. While Hanson never ultimately met Farage, the trip proceeded with meetings including former Reform UK MP Rupert Lowe and Robinson, who Channel 7 painted both as far right. That makes you a fascist or a Nazi. Who later appeared alongside Hanson during a podcast and Robinson, who later appeared alongside Hanson during a podcast recording filmed by Seven's cameras. So Channel 7 filmed that entire podcast to put it up. Alongside the email, Hanson captioned the post by questioning whether the program matched a proposal outlined by Spotlight. Here's a pitch from the bloke on the left. So that's him there, tall guy. Luke Mortimer, who works for Spotlight, she wrote alongside a photo of her. Mortimer reporter Liam Bartlett. Now, tell me if last night's show reflects that pitch. Well, to go further, for example, on that Tommy Robinson interview, and James Ashby was talking about this, I think, to Paul Murray, not only did they film that podcast, they arranged the podcast room. So Channel 7's in this up to their eyeballs, and they've pitched this all to Hanson and crew. And I'm going to be saying this, which I hope it doesn't offend them too much, but I think they foolishly fell for the pitch. I mean, Hanson's been the victim of a bunch of these stitch-ups all through their time in her political history. The alarm bells should have been going off, I would have thought, with this pitch. But at the same time, I can understand why they did it. They felt this was going to – there could be a thinking if they stitch her up, it was also going to play in their favour, which it has. I think the next polls will reflect that. I think everyone who watched that didn't even need that email to realise it was a stitch-up. You know, Liam Bartlett was Liam Bartlett. He's an arsehole. And when he brought up her past husband and all that from 30 years ago, we thought, oh, okay, here we go. You're in the gutter. And when he started, hassling Tommy Robinson, who was good enough to walk them in the streets, and Liam Bartlett decided to get on his high horse about it. Tommy Robinson is the first person to admit he's done wrong things. But they're in a country in the UK where a bunch of politicians, a bunch of bureaucrats, a bunch of officials in, for example, the police force and their legal departments and in their media, all ignored the grooming gangs, the Pakistani grooming gangs that had been raping, according to their own reports put in Parliament, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of young UK girls. But no, they just want to highlight Tommy Robinson's past. And nearly all those convictions, there's two sides to each story, if you read them up. So Tommy Robinson says he's no saint, but in certain things, he's fought a noble battle on behalf of the UK and its citizens. But they never highlight that, do they? They always highlight his past, and people like Bartlett, Bolt, Piers Morgan, a whole bunch of them keep going on about how he's a thug and he's a criminal and all this sort of thing. Well, he's done his time. You know, he may be a thug, he may be a criminal, but he got convicted, he went to jail, he served his time, he's done his time, he's now can go back into society and choose to be productive or not. He's a young man with a family who he's split from because of all this publicity. But who's the biggest criminal here? Is it Tommy Robinson, who openly admits that he has a troubled past? He's got some things in his history which he didn't have. He readily admits that all the time. And yet the media, like Piers Morgan is the worst of them, just keeps going back, as does Nigel Farage. I wouldn't trust Nigel Farage. So Channel 7 apparently set up a meeting with Nigel Farage, and they had his deputy come out to meet Pauline Hanson. What part did Nigel Farage play in that, and why? You know, Nigel Farage is no fool. He's been a part of the media. So did he play a part in setting up Hanson? Don't forget, Nigel Farage hates Robinson. Hanson and Robinson get on well. I wouldn't trust Farage as far as I could kick him. I know he's leading reform. I'd prefer someone like Rupert Lowe, who I don't agree with all his policies, but he's a straight shooter, you know. So he was done over by Farage and whatever. So politics is a nasty, nasty business, and media is a nasty business. You cannot trust these bastards as far as you can kick them. And where I can, I've got no links. I've got no one backing me. You can see my office. You can see my co-star, my dog. I will try to be as straight as I possibly can with everyone. I may get things wrong from time to time. I mean, when you're getting your sources from the net, there's a fair chance you will get it wrong. But I'll do my best to put my opinion on these things from a conservative lens. And I tell you, I'm not going to deliberately mislead you, because the government has paid $67 million into my industry to finance my company's expenses. That's like the government coming into me and saying, we want in your business to promote us as much as you can, and we'll give your business $2 million. I got to say, that would be tempting if someone came to me and did that with my business, because I need that sort of money. So that's where the old corruption comes in. It shouldn't be happening. There should be an oversight on this spending, and whoever has oversight on that should have said, no, this is wrong. You can't be doing that. You were basically trying to say, and now you've got all the media gunning for Hanson. How do we know this stitch-up didn't come from HQ above and said, we understand you've got this thing, you've got to make it a stitch-up. We need the funding from the government to keep coming through, stitch her up. That'd be going on all over. It would explain an awful lot, wouldn't it? The twisting, for example, of the White Australia policy comment. She didn't say she supported White Australia. She used that as a starting point of a timeline to explain a question that was put to her. And everything she said there was factual, every single thing. Our immigration policies started when the white nation policy was finished. You can agree with me. You don't have to be a supporter of the White Australia policy to acknowledge that's when all the immigration intake started to go. And it grew slowly but surely. And then we had mass immigration. Then we had the boats coming across. And ever since all that, and a lot of this goes back towards when this current generation, Gen Z, were just toddlers. When Howard turned back the Tampa, that was early 2000s. And now a lot of those young ones who are now adults are feeling the impacts of mass immigration. It dawned on me the other day, our younger kids, the Gen Zs, if they're 25, say, 25, 30, they've never known the Australia that we knew. They just don't know it. And Albo is banking on this to be able to change Australia forever from what it used to be. And he's banking on the boomer generation ultimately dying out and having less impact going forward. The most important generation in the current voting bloc is the millennials, who at the turn of the century were 25. I wish I was 25 at the turn of the century. I wasn't. I was 37. But, you could have been 18, so you're more aware of the history of what was going on, and you grew up in Australia where we didn't have the mass immigration we've got now. We didn't have the division that we've got now. We were living in an economy that had been, doing very well between the mid-90s going through to the whole 2000s, really. So we grew up in an Australia that was totally different from what Australia we're seeing now, and the impacts a lot of these issues are having on us. We've never been so divided. We never had the Islamic population that we have got now, and this pushing of Sharia law upon us that we have to find it acceptable. When I say pushing, it's a fact. They've taken these Islamophobia recommendations from an envoy who only spoke to the Islamic community, didn't speak to the wider community about it. So now we're all going to have to cop it on the chin about what we can say, can't say, whatever we're doing. So, and we risk now with these HPs introduced into law with the support of the Liberal Party, an unforgivable political sin that now restricts speech. We've got the social media ban, and they're trying to, and, if you're support, they're buying off the media to put a narrative out there that supports the government, that attacks anybody that would be daring to fight it. So now they're targeting Pauline and they're targeting One Nation. They will target others. For example, whether you agree with them or not, and I don't, are members of the White Australia Party who's now disbanded. So we've got a government who's trying to control the narrative through the media, through law, through special envoys. They dress it all up to make it all legitimate, but they're repressing speech. They're repressing opinion. They're denying people the right to gather in whatever manner they wish, whether that's at a church in a Christian congregation, whether that is with a party they consider far right. In a true democracy, like they have in America. I watched a very interesting show last night on Lincoln at Gettysburg, and I've never really looked at the Gettysburg Address. If you read that, you will. It's 272 words. It's an unbelievable speech. I watched it last night, then I read it. And if you applied that to Australia now, we are so far off the mark of that standard. It's crazy. And we've got to get back to that point of history. We've got to get back to that point of democracy. So, Lincoln went to war to preserve their constitution and preserve democracy. And democracy in its truest form. We don't have that in Australia. A lot of people think we do. We don't. All right? Some people, for example, in an election get more than one bite of the cherry for a vote. thanks to our preference system. Some people only get the one vote. Some people have that vote counted multiple times. How's that a democracy when someone gets more votes than, let's say, me? Or I get more votes than somebody else? That's not a democracy. Everyone's vote should be equal, but it's not. And we all know that. So anyway, enough of that, right? Let's get back in the X feed and let's have a look at some of the other things, because there's plenty of things which I haven't addressed yet this week, and I do want to get into them. Go home. One more. Max. There we go. Eureka Conservative. What have we got on? So the flag, they're coming for the flag. So the Australian Manufacturers Union has demanded Labor change the Australian flag, calling the Union Jack a symbol of oppression and colonialism. Now, that shows how ignorant the trade union movement is. I'll dedicate one of these episodes to the Union Jack. It doesn't represent that at all. It represents 3 Christian crosses overlaid on each other. And what our heritage, if you have Anglo heritage like mine, that Union Jack is part of your heritage. That's where your forebears came from. That's where Christianity took over the Roman Empire and expanded out into what is Western civilization throughout Europe. And that Western civilization then came across the oceans to places like America, to Canada, New Zealand, and Australia. That's what we were built upon. So it doesn't represent colonialism. It represents Christianity, which the workers' union would hate because most of them are communist bastards, especially the ones who are in charge. But that's what they're coming for. And if they can get that, they will come for far more. They'll come for our constitution. They'll come from the constitutional democracy that we enjoy. They'll come for other things that we take for granted in this country in a big way. Weak man. Oz Integrity. Let's have a look what they've got. This will be Barnaby.
Sit down! Sorry. It's a dog. Sit down!
That's pretty.
Sorry. It's a dog.
There'll be memes coming out. I've got to show you Ben's one from last. I didn't see it, actually. I was getting a coffee, but it looked pretty good. And Lozzie B, she brings up some good content. I've talked to her on chat. I'm hoping to get her on as a guest. Lozzie acknowledges this as well. We don't agree on everything, but she's got an amazing following, 145,000 followers, and she does share some good stuff. She's big on the remigration. I think I don't want to speak out of turn. I think she's a white nationalist. I could be wrong on that. I don't want to say that. And I hope she comes on the program and we can have a good chat about it. But she does do things like this. We've just had the Islamophobe recommendations, which is going to impact all of us. And she's put up here, a senior Muslim cleric in Australia has sparked a furor by comparing women who do not wear a headscarf to uncovered meat, implying that they invited sexual assault and rape. Sheikh Hilalia alluded in his sermon to the Muslim rape gangs in Sydney. Is there Muslim rape gangs in Sydney? I'm not so sure. Suggesting the attackers were not to blame. Referring to the attacks on 4 young white girls, well, maybe they would be, that were gang raped by a Muslim Lebanese gang. Well, that's disgraceful if it happened. I'm not too sure how current this is. I think this is an older version. Sheikh Hilali said there were women who sway suggestively and wore makeup and in modest dress, but the problem all began with who, he says. He's justing pedophilia and the gang rapes of young white girls, and he's living in our country preaching violence against our girls and women. Now, I do think that's an article, and again, I'm happy to be corrected. I do think that's an article from a while ago. And any rape of any woman is a disgusting crime that should be treated appropriately. But if you research under Sharia law, especially in Middle Eastern countries, most of the times the person who's been raped is then guilty, is being treated as the guilty person. A lot of Islamic scholars and leaders would attribute any rape onto the woman because they were uncovered. You know, there's women in Iran that get arrested because they show their hair. And this is what we're not going to be able to talk about if they keep getting their way. So this Islamophobia recommendations is a big concern, especially not long after the Bondi massacres. And here's a big part of the problem. The moderates in the Liberal Party. Liberal Senator Dave Sharma has ruled out the need for a coalition with One Nation, saying would only weaken the party's political prospects. Where's their party political prospects now? They are becoming a minor party. What a ridiculous comment. People are screaming out for some sort of unity on the centre right. Everyone I speak to would be loud in their support. And we spoke about this last night in our major podcast at 8, me and Ben. And my theory was we either have to go to a republic to save this country, or we need the Liberals to split into arseholes like this becoming the moderates and the Conservatives moving and joining One Nation to form a true Conservative party, no moderates within its ranks. And I think that split is probably the best way to go, because whoever does get in needs to be in a position to win government in both the lower house and the upper house, so they can pass some legislation that can really change this country for the better. We're not going to get that with a diluted Conservative party as exists within the Liberals right now. So, but you put that by anybody and everyone goes, oh, I'd love to see that. Love to see that. But don't know whether it's going to happen.
With real,
if their polls go down any lower, sorry guys, they may have to consider
concerns
that.
of an imminent attack.
Islamic State beheadings.
Now, just on the same week as we have the Islamophobe recommendations coming up, we've got this being revealed via the news. They've done some good.
Good evening. With real concerns of an imminent attack.
Islamic State beheadings and instructions on how to make a bomb.
The alleged ISIS recruiter appeared in Melbourne's Supreme Court today.
3 men have been found guilty of planning a Christmas terror attack using bombs and machetes in the heart of Melbourne.
These are people who should be punished for what they have done, but instead they're being incentivized, they are being rewarded, and they're able to get away with things that nobody should be getting away with.
A brave whistleblower with years of experience inside our prison system is breaking his silence for the very first time about a major scandal he claims is being deliberately covered up to protect those in charge while putting us, the public, at an unacceptable risk. For obvious reasons, we are protecting his identity, but I have personally verified his credentials, and I can tell you he is the real deal. In fact, I want to thank him for having the courage to come forward and sit down with me to warn Australians about what's really going on.
Sadly, the correction system in Victoria, as well as in other states, especially New South Wales, have become overrun by Muslims. We find that Muslims hold a position of power and prominence in a lot of the prisons, not only among prisoners, but sadly even among some correction staff. Among them,
I won't show you all of it. It goes for 20 minutes. Me, I don't disagree with Avi. Well, actually, yes, I do on certain things. But overwhelmingly, I agree with a lot of the things he does. I've got a fair bit of respect for Avi, especially pre-Rebel, what he did with the BLM protest. But go to his feet. He's worth to follow. I follow him. I link him into all the episodes. I would love to have Avi on as a guest to have a conversation at some stage. I don't think Avi is that keen on it, but he seems, because I talk to everyone, he probably thinks I'm linked in with NSN, the Groypers, or the far right, or whatever it is, which I'm not. But Avi does do some good stuff. There's stuff he does that I disagree with. But, you know, as Avi's put up there, you know, we've got this in our prison system, which is very dangerous. But Albo's done his $66 million funding to boost to combat Islamophobia. What are they going to do in our prison system, eh? Get on to him. What's his tag? At Osrali Avi. If you don't following him, there's his tag. There's his details. He's pretty global, Avi, 622,000 followers. You know, he's been to Canada, he's been to UK, he's had a lot of following from all over the place. So, you know, credit to him. Like I said, and you're never going to agree with everyone, but I'd like to get Avi on. I do think I think he can approach, he and Rukshan can approach, like I've done with Ben, and find some common ground with people like Scott Challen and Sam Banford. But I think it's gone too far. I think they've got a rivalry now that it's pretty harsh. But let's put it that way. Oh, shouldn't be in there. Darren Hinch, how is this ridiculous? He had his state funeral this week and they had a welcome to country. As it says here, Hinch opposed the humiliation rituals and spoke out against Brown's Anzac Day ceremony. This is the same guy that got booed at the Anzac ceremony. Albo is going to enshrine welcome to country as law. You've got to have it. Basically, everyone's going to be forced to have a welcome to country if you're holding some sort of event. It'll be interesting to see how far and how deep it goes. I'm not going to be holding any welcome to countries. I can tell you that now if I organise an event. If that means you get a fine or whatever, so be it. We shouldn't be having this nonsense forced down our throats. I was born and raised in this country. My parents were born and raised in this country. My grandparents were born and raised in this country. Their parents were born and raised in this country. Why do I need a welcome to country from some dickhead who just bleeds the taxpayer dollars for a ridiculous thing like that? And why doesn't Darren Hinch's family, why doesn't Darren Hinch get a bit of a say in the planning? If it means if you're a family who gets, which obviously mine won't, but if you're a family that is offered a state funeral, I would really reconsider it if you're opposed to the welcome to country.
Something that lots of reasons.
Listen to this nutty stuff about Barnaby's dog.
Topic to something that lots of reasons I think has meant that the nation's been talking about Barnaby Joyce yelling at his dog. I don't know if you saw the yelling of the dog or whether you think it's significant. Sally, do you care?
Well, PK, you know the saying that if you want a friend in politics, you should get a dog. I think in this case, Barnaby shouldn't even get a dog. Topic to something that lots of reasons I think.
God, that's so pathetic. It's that's Sally. She's an ALP member of Parliament, of course. So they're clutching at straws to try and build this
Federal
up.
Police Detective Superintendent David Craig. David.
Okay, this is worth a listen. This is from Peter Carlin. It's only 5 minutes, and perfect, because I've promised I'll only go 10 for an hour each of these mornings. So this is what it just says out. Listen to this. This is important. This is the Islamophobia recommendations. This is from a former AFP detective who are now going to be having extra training to combat Islamophobia. It's absurd.
Lieutenant David Craig. David, I want to talk to you about the report over the weekend, the government's response, I should say, to the Islamophobia Envoy's report. But first, I want your reaction to that decision today. Police opposed her release on bail. She was released, though. Your reaction?
My first reaction is at least there are some bail conditions. My second take on that is that that's not nearly far enough. If the allegations are true, then this person should be watched 24/7, and there needs to be a federal control order monitoring that person 24/7. I think, Peter, without criticising the court, I'm sure Sinnott, or whatever his name was, has thought about this, but the fact is she's been accused of showing radical material to children. She's been told that encourage the children to replicate ISIS fighters. Those can both be replicated in the home right here, right now. There's no reason that offence couldn't reoccur. She's also attempted to recruit family members. And these are all allegations, and they may be absolutely incorrect. But she could also do that from her home now as well. So it's like she won't be able to continue with the same offences for which she was charged, but I think the court is throwing her and her children to the lions as far as a possibility of reoffending for new offences that are very similar to what she's been charged with.
Right, I'm going to do some digging around on de-radicalisation programs. I looked into them very much when I was in the UK. I've done a bit of research here. I haven't got enough to put it to air yet, but I'll come back to them because that was also a requirement of her bail. I just want to ask before we move to other things, I thought you had to show your face in court.
Look, I think it comes down to the presiding magistrate, presiding worship over the court for those rules, Peter. From a federal perspective, is different to a state, and this was being heard in a state court.
All right, I'll find out more on that one as well. Let's go to that report by the Prime Minister, sort of the response by the Prime Minister to the report of his Islamophobia envoy. It was released on Saturday. It wasn't everything that was adopted by the government. Certainly a lot was. There was significant funding provided as well. Today, though, the nation's imams and other Muslim leaders are pressuring the government to accept the report, Aftab Malik's report, in full. The government said that they'd accept 35 of 53 recommendations. Give me your sense of things, David, on the report, but also the funding.
I'd like to know, 35 of 53, I'd like to know what the other 18 recommendations were. It would be interesting outside the ones we've heard.
Because the quantum there is significant, $65 million.
Yeah, it's. I think that this is an absolute folly, Peter. I can't believe that this would be accepted. I thought that Malik was going to put together a fairly astute report and not just a pro-Muslim report. I mean, I'm very disappointed that he could have done a lot better. I mean, $15 million for a Muslim community centre. Now, what's a Muslim sports centre? I mean, how is that going to help Islamophobia for every other religion or atheist that goes past the $15 million Muslim-only sports centre? How is that helping social cohesion? It's a ridiculous thing. They're saying also that they're going to increase the security by $42 million for community and security for mosques. That's in addition to the $25 million already given in the current budget. So we're spending $67 million on Muslim community services and security for mosques. It does not sound like it's really worth it when you look at the number of attacks that are occurring in religious places. They're not happening in mosques. They're happening in synagogues. They're happening in churches more often than they're happening in mosques. They're also asking to rewrite the school curriculum and to educate people about Islamophobia, etc. But that's only for the state-based police, state-based schools, the ACRA schools. That doesn't apply to Islamic schools. They're not meant to be taught about social cohesion. It's only all the other schools. I think it's very one-eyed, it's myopic, and it won't help. Oh, sorry. There's also compulsory training for AFP officers for Islamic training, as well as for parliamentarians. Now, I can tell you, as having been in the AFP for a substantial period of time, there is already a lot of cross-cultural training done. The last thing the AFP needs now, the last thing the Australian community needs now, is pulling more frontline officers off to tick some box for some additional training, which they've had in depth anyway. And where are the AFP showing that they're Islamophobic? Where has that been shown?
Just quickly, the push by John O'Donoghue for the release of a report from the AFP. This is about critical shortages in staffing in counter-terrorism.
I mean, this is the absurdity of our current government. They create issues where there are none. I mean, it's bizarre beyond belief. That less than a year out from the Bondi massacres, they've somehow managed to turn a radical Islamic attack on innocent people into an Islamophobia issue. What the hell is that all about? And they're spending millions. You know, if you take into what's already in the budget that gentleman just identified, 25 million already for security, and they're going to give them another 40 odd million, 65 million. As he rightly says, mosques aren't being attacked. Synagogues are, churches are. Where do we have funding for that security? Well, we probably do. You know who doesn't have the funding? If you're a Catholic and go to a Catholic church, I'll guarantee you your church gets no funding. And now they're going to indoctrinate our kids first about all this diversity and nonsense going in instead of Australians being Australian.
We've got 18,000.
I think I played this yesterday, but I might play it again. Look at the response this guy gets for trying to paint Pauline Hanson as a white nationalist. It's quite funny.
Chris, at the moment, we've got 18,000 people on watch list. Asia watch list. We've got a real problem that's growing in this country with radicalisation. We've had a number of terrorist attacks by Muslims in Australia. We've just had the biggest one ever last December at Bondi. You've got to call out the elephant in the room. And I'm sorry to say this, but I don't want people coming to this country from radical Islamic countries. I don't want that here. I want to protect the Australian people. I want them to feel safe in the streets. I don't want to see this anti-Semitism that's going on. I don't want to see the hatred that's happening. And I just feel that, you know, that's why I'm very strong on certain countries. You've got to say no. And I've got to...
Exactly right.
I mean, is that...
Now listen to this.
Though, that is a version of a white Australia policy, is it?
No, it's not. No, it's not.
Listen to the crowd. Listen to the crowd.
No, it's got nothing to do with that. That's not to do with the white Australia policy at all. So don't go there with me, I'll tell you what, because I won't stand for it.
We're not falling for it. We're over it. We're just over this nonsense. So that was an editor of one of the West Australian newspaper, an editor-in-chief who brought that up. What a nonsensical thing to say. And you can hear by the response of the crowd in that, they're just not falling for it. None of us are. Now, the left will go for it because they eat this sort of stuff up. Anything to take Hanson as a racist, they'll do. But she's never, ever come close to saying, I want the white Australia policy back, or I'm a white nationalist or anything like that. Never gone near it. But they're trying to taint her with that. So she does have to be, Pauline and One Nation do have to be very careful, because there are the laws there now that if they can take them down through hate speech, they can do it. So they've got to be very careful in the way they approach these things. And if they give them reason to do so, my bet is this government will jump all over it. Power corrupts, absolute power corrupts, absolutely. So I've got no doubt Albo would do or say anything to keep his hands on power. Anyway, that's just clicked over an hour. So have a good day. Enjoy your work. Enjoy whatever you're doing with your day. And we will see you tomorrow morning. I've got through to Wednesday getting up for 9 o'clock sessions. It's actually been pretty good for me. I get up and I've got a bit of work done during my days. I used to do my work early in the morning where no one could go. I'd go to bed at 3, wake up at 12, and I'd just run a different schedule because I'm an ex-shift worker. So for me, that worked. But this one actually has proven to be a bit of fun as well. So anyway, that's it from me. God bless your kids. God bless you. God bless your kids. God bless your grandkids. God bless. Is he there? Yes. Look at him. Good boy. God bless your pets. God bless that flag in this country. And I'll see you tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock.